This is the Content Marketing Podcast, episode number 42, Building Your Content Marketing Team. Hello and welcome to the Content Marketing Podcast. This is the show where we help you attract and retain business through the power of quality content. I'm your host, Rachel Parker of Resonance Content Marketing, and today is October 24th, 2013. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for episode 42 of the Content Marketing Podcast.
The answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything is 42.
And yes, when I saw that this week's episode number was 42, I could not resist getting my geek on and sharing that clip from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Big favorite of mine. So I'm not sure if this episode will give you the ultimate answer to life, the universe, and everything, but we will sure try to answer your questions as they relate to content marketing. Just a reminder, we are live on iTunes and also on Stitcher. So if you're listening to this episode on the blog, you can click on over and subscribe. That means you'll get new episodes automatically delivered to your smartphone or your listening device of choice. And if you use a different app for your podcast listening pleasure, we also have an RSS feed, and I will provide that link in the blog post. Last week's podcast was for our listeners in corporate America, specifically those who are valiantly trying to get their bosses sold on the idea of content marketing, and we shared some tips on how to go about doing that. So if you happen to miss that episode, please feel free to click on over to iTunes or to Stitcher or to the RSS feed and get all caught up. That brings me to today's topic. Today's podcast is a sort of continuation from last week's episode because we are going to talk about building your content marketing team. So let's just say that after listening to last week's podcast, you managed to successfully sell your boss on content marketing, and he or she gave you the green light, and you have a budget now, and now your next step is to go about building your content marketing team. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, first I want to clarify something. What I'm going to be talking about are not necessarily the individual people you need to have on your team, but rather we're going to go through the roles that need to be covered, that need to be filled. So one person could definitely play more than one role, or you could have one role assigned to several people, or you could choose to fill some roles in-house and choose to outsource some others to either third-party providers or independent contractors. The first role that I want to talk about is that of your content team leader. So we're going to start at the top of this mini pyramid that's going to make up your content marketing team. And this person is going to be in charge of the big picture. So for the sake of today's podcast, I will call it the content team leader. So even if you choose to outsource every other aspect of your content marketing program, you absolutely must have someone within your organization who, number one, acts as the point of contact for any of those third-party providers, but mainly you need someone who really owns content marketing in the organization. And I've seen it happen many times that a company decides to, quote-unquote, do content marketing. They hire an agency, and then they assign a lower-level person with no real authority to serve as the point person. And that situation is really not good for anybody. Number one, the organization is not getting as much out of their agency as they could because they're not really providing that strategic direction. The agency kind of winds up floundering around, kind of take a best guess at what is best for the company. And the point person really is not in a comfortable position because they have to manage this agency, whereas they have no real authority. So what can happen is that when the content marketing program doesn't have a real champion with some authority in the organization, the sooner or later, the bean counters will come along and ask, oh, well, what's the purpose of this content marketing program? Why are we spending so much money on it? And if the program doesn't have a champion with some real authority, then that could be, your content marketing program could be the first victim of the next round of budget cuts. So you really need someone in a management role who is willing to take on the role of content team leader. So what the team leader role encompasses, number one is developing and maintaining the overall content marketing strategy. And to do that, this person needs to ensure that the content marketing is in sync with the organization. So this person would need to stay in the loop on everything that's going on within the business, and that would mean new products, new initiatives, any new customer data that's coming in, anything that could affect the content marketing program, which is pretty much anything that's going on in the organization. So this may involve regular meetings with other departments. It could mean weekly conference calls, just to stay in the loop and make sure that he or she understands everything that's going on. Another role that this team leader would play is to be the champion of content marketing, as I talked about a few minutes ago, to really make sure that everyone throughout the organization understands what this is and why it's important. It's not just a nice to do. It's not something that, we were bored, so we decided to start doing this, but someone who can really explain the value to the organization and can get buy-in from employees at all different levels, because when you start producing that content, you want your employees to be excited about it. Someone to be sharing those blog posts, retweeting those tweets, liking your Facebook posts, talking about your webinars and your ebooks, things like that. So this person really needs to be a champion at all levels and to be walking the content marketing talk and engaging everyone on every level of the organization. This person is also going to act as project manager for everything that team undertakes. So whether it's getting started on a new social platform or launching a webinar series or producing a white paper or an ebook, this person is going to make sure all those moving parts stay moving. So for example, for an ebook, this person is going to make sure that the writers are writing what they need to write and that they stay on deadline, that the layout, that you have someone positioned to do layout, someone is doing graphics, and make sure all that stays on course and gets produced when you need it. What else does this person do? This person would also be the final say on all decision making. So this person would be the person, let's say one of your content writers finds out about some new social network that they think would be really beneficial. This person would be the final arbiter on what we do and what we don't do going forward. This person would also review any analytics and adjust the strategy going forward. So all kinds of different roles for this team leader. And again, it may or may not be a full-time job depending on the size of your content marketing program and of course on your budget. But it is a role that needs to be filled in your organization, and it needs to be assigned to the right person with the right skill set. The next role I want to talk about is the role of content editor. This person will be the keeper of the brand as it relates to your content. So this person would need to be deeply familiar with all aspects of your brand promise, your value proposition, your brand character, your brand attributes. And this person would also work closely with the team leader to develop a policies and procedures document that is going to guide all of your content creation and publishing going forward. And it's really important to have that document, not only for when you bring new people on board, but also to keep the existing people, to give them a reference to look at when they have questions or they need some guidance. This person would also be the owner of the style guide, and we've talked about that previously here and there, but you really need a document that entails how your content is presented. For example, do you use a serial comma in your content writing? And that's a serial comma would be, for example, if you have the phrase red, white, and blue, it would be a comma after red and also after white. And some styles use the serial comma, some do not. It's up to you, but you need to be consistent. You also need to relate in detail how you handle product trademarks, which products are trademarked and which are registered trademarked. Also, how you refer to yourself. Some organizations refer to themselves in the first person. They would say we and us and our, and some only refer to themselves in the third person. So they would say this organization and it and its, things like that. So these are things that need to be decided so that they can be consistent across all your different channels. So this person would be responsible for putting together the style guide and working with the team leader to get sign-off wherever they need it. This person would also be kind of the final arbiter in terms of reviewing any substantial piece of content. So this person would be reviewing all the blog posts, all articles, video scripts and storyboards, and for the smaller pieces of content, I don't necessarily see them reviewing every tweet before it goes out, but this person would want to work with whoever is doing the tweeting and making sure that that person is on board with what is and is not acceptable, or what is and is not advised in terms of tweeting for this brand, because we have seen some brands get into big trouble when they tweet on a moment's notice. This person would also distribute writing assignments. So you might have 2 or 3 writers who are creating content for your brand. This person would be very familiar with those writers' skill sets and be able to distribute assignments accordingly. And this person would have final authority on what gets posted. So I don't necessarily see the team leader being the final authority on every single piece of content. I think that would be more the content editor role. This person might also be responsible for looking outside the organization, looking outside for guest posting opportunities, for syndication opportunities. And this might be the point person who would be getting in touch with those online publications and getting in touch with those bloggers and arranging those guest posting opportunities, which can be, of course, a tremendous boost to your content clout. And I say the clout, lowercase clout, not the formal clout. Now, it's entirely possible that your content editor would also be a content writer. You might have 2 or 3 writers on your team, and one plays that role of kind of the first among equals and also serve as the content editor. The next role I want to talk about is content writing, and this would be the actual writing of the words that go into your content. This could be writing blog posts, articles, on a larger scale, maybe white papers, also video storyboards, video scripts, also infographic contents. If you want to produce an infographic, you would have a graphic designer in charge of the actual layout, but you would also want to have a writer putting together the content that's going to go into that piece. And for this role, you want to make sure to bring people on board who can write for your brand. There are many, many talented writers out there who, unfortunately, kind of have their own style, and that's it. They're not able to adapt to the brand that they're representing in their role as a content writer. So make sure you have people who can write for your brand and in your brand voice. You also want to make sure that the people who do your writing are flexible, or that you can have different people filling different roles. For example, you might have a short form content, which would be your blog post and maybe shorter articles, but you also want to incorporate longer form content like white papers and ebooks. Another thing to consider when you bring on people to do your content writing is agility. You want to make sure you have people who can jump on a very short-term opportunity at a moment's notice. Someone who can recognize something that's going on in the news and be able to jump on it. And I'm thinking of something like, if you remember back to the Super Bowl in 2013, Nabisco, they put out a absolutely brilliant piece of micro content. So if you remember the Super Bowl, there was one point during the game where the lights went out, and they couldn't continue the game because lights had gone out on I think half the Superdome was in darkness. So people were just kind of waiting around and waiting for that to get fixed so the game could go on. Well, while this was going on, the content creators at Nabisco put out an image on Twitter, and it was kind of a dark set with a spotlight on an Oreo, and the tagline was, "You can still dunk in the dark. So, I don't know if your team could create something like that, but you do want to make sure that they're on top of what's going on in the news, what's going on currently, and can jump on those opportunities. You don't want someone who can just, focus on one thing and not even think about anything else. You want to make sure that you have that agility built into your team. You also want to make sure that your content writers have at least a basic knowledge of SEO, that's search engine optimization. Make sure that they're at least familiar with the concept of keywords, that they know which keywords are important for your brand, and that they can use them appropriately as they create your content. The next role that I want to talk about is graphic design. So you want to have people working on your team or for your team if you go with an independent contractor, and these people would be responsible for all of your visuals. We're talking about static visuals. So any photos, any maybe backgrounds for your video, maybe infographics, definitely. Also PowerPoints that you use either in your webinars or maybe that you upload to SlideShare. And just like you want to make sure that your writers understand your brand as it relates to writing, you want to ensure that your graphic designers understand your visual brand. So the colors you use, your logo standards, your style and your graphic standards. So for example, some brands like a very clean look and they like a lot of white space, whereas other brands like a more busy format, a little bit more going on visually. So you want to make sure that your the graphic design people on your team really understand what your brand is about from a visual standpoint. And you also want to explain all the different aspects of your content when you bring these folks on. So some people, from a graphic designer standpoint, are great at the kind of fun, engaging, creative projects like an infographic, but not so much on the detail-oriented pieces, like, for example, laying out a white paper. So you want to make sure that people understand exactly what it is that you're going to need from them and exactly what you're going to expect from them so that they can deliver the best possible service to your team going forward. The next role I want to talk about is video production. So you want to have someone on your team who is in charge of creating video assets. And that could be anything from a simple 90-second video tutorial or maybe a testimonial interview or something more complex like animations. And the skills that you need for this role really depend on what part video plays in your overall content marketing strategy. So your team leader is going to need to really look at what you want out of video and the skill sets that you need to make that happen. The first skill set that you're going to want to look at is the basics of the video shoot. So someone who knows what you need in terms of lighting, in terms of sound, in terms of equipment, what kind of camera or a microphone and lighting and other things you need, the basics of backgrounds, other visual elements, and also how to frame a shoot. So if you're shooting actual video, how to frame that, what goes front and center, what should be off to the side, things like that. The second skill set to look at is your video production software that they're going to use to create these videos. And there are two basic classes of video production software. One is the simple class, and these programs tend to be either very low cost or in some cases free. And that would be things like iMovie for the Mac or Windows Movie Maker for the PC. And also, I would put Camtasia in that simpler class. And these programs or these apps tend to be pretty easy to use, but they're a little more limited in their capability than the complex class. Now, the complex class of video production software are things like Apple's Final Cut, Adobe Production Pro, Sony Vegas. Now, these they have a much steeper learning curve. So it's not something that you could pick up just playing with over a weekend. They're pretty complex, but they have a lot more bells and whistles, and you have a lot more flexibility in terms of what you can do with your video. So again, it all depends what your strategy calls for in terms of what you want to be producing from on your videos. The third skill set is you want someone who is at least familiar with online video, someone who knows how to manage YouTube, how to optimize those descriptions, and to use those apps that are built into YouTube. If you choose to do some self-hosting, they would know how that works. Or if you use a hosting service like Wistia, they should be familiar with that. And also with other things like, for example, Vine, which is the micro video, the little 6-second videos. If you decide to do that, your video person should be familiar with how that works. And again, it all depends really what your strategy demands from your video and, of course, on your budget. The next role I want to talk about is social media. It is essential to have someone either on your team or connected to your team who is an absolute whiz at all the social networks where you have a presence. And I'm talking like the big three: Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Any niche sites that your brand is active on, for example, Pinterest. Someone who is familiar with social bookmarking sites, so Dig, StumbleUpon, to make sure that your content gets bookmarked on those areas. Also maybe on location-based social media like Foursquare. You really want to make sure that this person is familiar with all of the networks where you have a presence, and that person kind of has their finger on the pulse of social media. So if any new opportunities come along, this person could alert you to that. So this person would be responsible for your social posting, for your posts on Facebook, on your tweets, on your LinkedIn posts. They would also be monitoring any comments or any posts, say on your Facebook page, or any mentions. This person would also keep an eye out for questions that represent opportunities. So let's say, for example, that you work for Dell. You're going to want to keep your ear to the ground in terms of, looking out there on Facebook, on Twitter, on any social networks, and kind of culling out questions that you can answer. So, for example, if you work for Dell, you're going to be listening for questions about PC purchases. If, for example, someone might tweet the question, I need a PC for video production. How much memory do I need? And really answering those questions and engaging those folks so that you can maximize those opportunities to get your brand out there and maybe even to earn a customer or two. This person, you also want to make sure that they are engaging with influencers. And these would be bloggers, publications, brands, and other entities who the people in your target audience listen to. So, any publication that the people in your target audience really look up to, maybe blogs they visit on a regular basis, you want to make sure that your social media person is engaging with those influencers. And finally, your social media person should be engaging in communities. So these would be things like Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, Google Plus communities. And these typically are setups where pages cannot participate. So you couldn't participate in a Facebook group as Dell, but you could be participating in a Facebook group as Susie Smith, who is the social media coordinator for Dell, and be engaged in those communities and be answering those questions and taking part in those discussions. You want to make sure that your social media person is on board with that as well. The last role I want to talk about is analytics. So you really want to have someone on your team or working for your team who is a whiz at those numbers that tell you how you're doing. So this person would be looking at your blog, any website articles. They would be tracking the number of hits, the number of comments that your blog is getting, the number of social shares that those blog posts or articles are getting. This person would also be looking at your social media analytics, things like Facebook Insights, your followers, your likes, your comments, your shares, your mentions on social media. They might keep an eye on your clout score. Also, any additional analytics, so your webinar attendance or how many ebook or white paper downloads you managed to rack up over a certain period of time. Really anything that the team leader would need to look at when he or she is kind of reevaluating your strategy on a regular basis. You want to present, this person would present a clear picture that they can say, okay, here's what's working well, here's what we need to do more of, here's what needs to stay the same, and here's something that we might want to look at diverting those resources elsewhere. So your analytics are absolutely key in the continuing success of your content marketing program. So those are the 7 basic roles that I came up with that need to be covered in your content marketing team. Now, again, does that mean any team needs at least 7 people to be successful? Absolutely not. It's just these are the roles that need to be covered, either by your internal staff or by third-party providers or by independent contractors, except, of course, for the team leader. You really need someone within your organization who is championing that cause. Also, the size of your team is going to depend on the scope of your content marketing program. For example, if you look at an organization like HubSpot, they are just a content generation machine. They blog a couple of times a day. They produce ebooks constantly. They're constantly doing webinars. So if you want to go on that scale, you're going to need a pretty sizable team. But if your program is on a smaller scale, you can scale your team accordingly. So those are my thoughts on building your content marketing team. I really hope you found this helpful. And as always, if you have any specific questions that I can help you with, just ping me and I will be happy to help any way I can. Now it's time for our content marketing tip of the week. For today's tip, I want to continue on the team building theme to talk about recruiting. I want to talk about looking at, if you're looking at creating a solid content marketing team, looking beyond the traditional job posting mechanisms. So for your traditional job posting for your company, you might be posting a job on the website, maybe using Monster, maybe using LinkedIn job function to post that job posting. And the limitation of that is that you're only going to be reaching people who are actively searching for jobs, someone who is actively looking for that position on your content marketing team. Whereas by broadening your scope a little bit, you might be able to reach people who might not currently be considering changing their job situation, but if they find your offer compelling, they might entertain that possibility. And the things you can look at are doing, number one, social media posts. So getting out there on Facebook, on Twitter, and just asking your personal community, hey, we're looking to bring on a graphic designer on a content marketing team. Does anyone know of anyone who would be a good fit? You could even be creative and get on YouTube and maybe, give a little tour of your facility, interview other people on the team. We're really looking for a good fit for this team, and to really kind of give them a taste for what they'll be working on. So number one is social media posts. Number two would be your social media communities. So get on those LinkedIn groups, get on those Google Plus communities, and see about tapping those folks for help with finding the next team member that you're looking to hire. I would also reach out to influencers, maybe people who are in your circle who address a similar target audience. Ask if they know of anyone, and you might think about putting that in your e-newsletter. Say, hey, we're hiring content writers. If you know of anyone who would be a good fit for our team, let us know. And really, through a little creative thinking, it can do real wonders for finding just the right people to build your content marketing team. Okay, campers, that is it for me this week. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. If you like what you've heard today, please feel free to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or via our RSS feed. And if you really like what you've heard, please leave us a quick review on iTunes. I would so appreciate it. For more information about content marketing, you're welcome to visit our blog at resonancecontent.com/blog, where you'll also find links to our pages on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and other social networks. If you'd like to email me a question to cover in an upcoming tip of the week, that would be fantastic. You can contact me anytime at rachel@resonancecontent.com. And if you'd like for me to come speak about content marketing to your business or your organization, you can find information about my most current talk at contentmarketingspeaker.net. As always, I'd like to leave you with a quote, and today's is from Tony Hsieh, who is the CEO of Zappos. He says, very simply, your culture is your brand. Something to think about as you go forward building your content marketing team. Again, this is Rachel Parker with Resonance Content Marketing, and we will see you again next week. Take care.